Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our webinar this morning. My name is Gráinne Oates. I'm the CEO and founder of Quitch, and I'm very excited to have you here today. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our guest presenter for today, Wayne Coetzee. Wayne is a chartered accountant. He's a teaching fellow at the University of Melbourne in the Department of Accounting and Finance, and that falls under that Faculty of Business and Economics. Wayne has been the recipient of the Dean's Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2020, and indeed in 2023, he received the Carl Johnson Teaching Excellence Certificate. Wayne, for all of us who know him globally, we have great respect and time for the amount of effort he puts into his teaching, and really is known for his passion to deliver great learning outcomes, and also very much a focus on that learner journey and the learner engagement as well. So therefore, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Wayne to present today on his cutting-edge delivery of auditing, teaching auditing to students. Thank you so much for being with us today, Wayne, and over to you.
Thank you, Gráinne. Thank you for that very nice introduction. It is my privilege to present here to you all today. And I really hope you find what we are going to discuss today useful, and it's able to inform your own teaching practice. What we tried to attempt to do at the University of Melbourne and utilizing Quitch was to make our workshops more interactive and immersive for our students, and allowed them to build that knowledge puzzle within the workshop instead of just, spoon feeding them information. And hopefully our innovations would prove to be successful. Now, just a little bit about myself. I am originally from South Africa, but I've been in Australia now for a number of years. As Gráinne mentioned, I came through the South African Chartered Accounting System, and I also taught at a university in South Africa. So I was involved in tertiary education for quite a while in South Africa before we came over to Australia. Now, that actually made the transition for my education or my academic journey quite easy because of the international standards in auditing. The only thing that I had to change when we moved over to Australia was a currency. Everything else remained exactly the same. So it was quite a nice transfer of knowledge that I had from South Africa over to Australia. So the things that we are going to be talking about today is the global problem that we face in auditing and accounting education. We're also going to touch on AI and how AI is directly impacting us as educators, specifically with my lens on myself as an audit educator, but how it is also impacting on our students and our students' view of that. I'm also going to take you through some of the resources that at the University of Melbourne we previously had. And when you see the demonstration of what they look like, you would be able to see that these were unengaging resources. But not only unengaging, they were also pretty unrealistic and inauthentic. I'll talk you through the redevelopment that we had utilizing Quitch and why this now feels a lot more realistic to students. And then the most important part, what we're striving to achieve, is a positive student response. So I'll take you through some of the responses that we got from our students. So as I said, as in the introduction, my name is Wayne Coetzee. Please, by all means, connect with me. I will provide my email address at the end of my presentation, but also if you want to connect with me via my LinkedIn profile, I welcome all of these connections. I always strive to evolve my teaching to be fit for purpose for the modern day. And because we're now in 2024, I'm continuously thinking about authentic practice in 2024 and how that is brought out in the classroom. So in other words, that are the things that I'm teaching, is it still stuck in the past? Is it still the 1990s in the classroom and then expecting our students to perform in 2024? Or are we delivering relevant content today? And that's why I've got my little saying here. I'm just a teaching fellow. I'm nothing special. And I'm just talking to you as educators and asking you to reflect on your own practice and think how you can evolve. But let's talk about the problem. Now, I remember a few months ago, it may even be close to a year now, I was chatting to my niece. Her name's Gabriella, and she was in year 12, 17 years old, year 12. So she was just about to leave the secondary schooling system and moving on to her university education. And we were having a family barbecue. And I said to Gabriella, what do you intend to do in the future? Just a little bit of context, her mother, my sister, is also a trained accountant. Her uncle, being me, was a trained accountant. And so I thought, an accounting education would be a good fit for her, a good journey. She would have all these resources to draw on to help her through an accounting degree. Her response to me was, never in a million years will I study accounting. It is so boring. And therein lies the problem. The accounting discipline, and more specifically auditing, for a long time with students has been perceived as boring. We know it's not boring. We know that's a misconception. Accounting education is dynamic and interesting. But from a student's point of view, they don't view it the same way. Now, this is a problem that we have definitely found here at the University of Melbourne. It was a problem that I had when I was teaching in South Africa. The South African students felt the same. And I've spoken to colleagues globally, and I've actually made a note of where they came from. It is colleagues in the UK, Spain, Japan, the USA, and Canada that I've spoken to. And all of them agree that this problem of the misconception and misperception of accounting education is a global issue. And that's why we had to set about thinking of ways to change this perception of students. Accounting is viewed as boring. Auditing, the subset of accounting, is viewed as the worst of the worst. So it was a real challenge to change this perception. But it wasn't only this global misconception, it was also the following, which we had to think about, was the impact of artificial intelligence. I have lost count over the past few months, the past year or so, how many students, accounting students, have come up to me and said, please tell us, what does the future hold for accountants and auditors? Are the jobs in the future going to be obsolete? And truth be told, it's a valid concern of our students. It's valid questions from them. Because AI is no longer this abstract thing that we find in sci-fi movies. It's here. It is part of our lives. And in fact, it's so much part of our lives that some of the images that you're going to see in today's presentation is a direct result of generative AI. I haven't found them anywhere else except from generative AI. But this also means that the way that we teach accounting and specifically auditing has to change. The way we taught it 10 years ago, heck, 5 years ago, is no longer appropriate. It has to change. It has to evolve. Because otherwise, we're doing our students a massive disservice by not including AI practices and just flat out ignoring it. But what is the actual answer? Is AI and RPA, robotic process automation, are these going to replace accountants and auditors? Well, frankly, the answer is no. Every semester, I have a guest lecturer that comes in from one of the big four accounting firms, and they address this topic directly. They recognize that accountants and auditors have never been more in demand, but they also recognize that the profession, the job, has changed. AI won't replace accountants and auditors, but it will change the way that we view our profession and do our jobs. Effectively, auditors will have to use AI more effectively to achieve their goals. And that is what we need to communicate to our students. But not only AI, the problem got a whole lot bigger with unengaging resources. Now, if you have a look at what's on the left-hand side of your screen, this was a resource that we previously gave to students during our workshops. There's nothing wrong with it. The actual content within the workshop or in the handout is pretty interesting, the actual case study. But the format of it was just boring. It wasn't inspiring at all. And not only that, we had this global misconception that auditing is boring and accounting is boring. If we started giving students these sort of resources, it just played into that misconception. And thus we had to start thinking about ways to change it. Now, I'm going to ask you to reflect on your own student resources and your own current practices. Do they inspire students or do they discourage students? It's something that you always have to think about. Let's just go back to this resource that we previously gave. It's, from my view now, it's a whole bunch of words. Yes, there's a few numbers thrown in there, but then we go back to a whole heap of words. So just the format just doesn't feel interesting and inspiring for students. And this is why I came to ask myself a few key questions. And a light bulb went off after I actually spoke with an industry partner. And I came to the following conclusion. The course that, the materials that we were giving to students was just inauthentic and it just didn't feel right. It was unrealistic. And that's why I asked myself the question, why is this unrealistic? And it's the following reason. Before I was an academic, I worked in industry. I worked in industry for quite a few years. And I realized what we were providing to students was absolutely nothing like what happens at a real accounting and auditing firm. And let's just go back to that resource. I just had a look at the resource that we were previously providing. And I thought to myself, never in a million years is a new graduate going to join an accounting firm and their manager is going to come with a convenient little one pager with all the information on the one pager for their new or prospective client. Yes, there's some nice ratios there for them to consider. Here's all the financial information. Here are all the different sources of information. Here is the control, who controls the company. It's all conveniently placed for you new graduates on this one little piece of paper. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in real accounting and audit firms. And this is why I thought to myself, if it's not what is happening out there in industry, why are we doing this to our students? Why are we giving them these things that do not reflect authentic audit practice? And that is why I began exploring different ways to bring authenticity back into the classroom and thinking of ways to try re-energize the accounting and auditing students. And it was that at that exact moment that Grenier and Quitch came along. And then we started a beautiful collaboration between the University of Melbourne and Quitch. Now, over the past year and a half, we've been working together in the subject that I directly coordinate, which is undergrad auditing. Although I do know that Quitch is also involved with a few different subjects at the university with a few of my colleagues here in the department. Together, we've been able to build a fully immersive and interactive workshop for auditing, utilizing the technologies that have been built into Quitch, as well as the redeveloped resources that we have for the audit workshops. Now, you might ask the question, was all of this plain sailing? Was it an easy thing to do? And as expected, the answer is no, it wasn't easy. It took quite a few hours of research and planning before we were able to get to our finished product. But what did we actually do here? Between ourselves and Quitch, we set up a working group to build this new authentic experience for students at the University of Melbourne. We actively went through every single workshop that we deliver over the course of a 12-week semester, and we redesigned every single resource for every single workshop. We carefully thought about these redeveloped resources. We carefully crafted the material and always making sure that the ones who would benefit directly from this were the students. Were the students benefiting from what we're doing, or was it in the opposite direction? At the same time, we were testing whether Quitch would be the tool that we would use to disseminate these tools. and we had to go through a massive step-by-step approach in order to get to our finished product. So let's just talk about that for a second. Step number one was getting the technology in place. So we were working through whether Quitch was the appropriate tool or not in order to for the platform for our redesigned workshops. Now, as I mentioned, every single resource that we had and every single redevelopment that we had was going to be or Quitch was going to be used for the dissemination of this. But this means for every single thing, we had to work out whether it was the resources, whether it was the quiz or the questions, every single moving part of Quitch, we had to make sure that it worked for our students. There were numerous discussions, lots of back and forths and lots of feedback, and many hours were spent to get Quitch into the model that worked for the students of the University of Melbourne. In fact, I actually remember a meeting that I had with Sandra Campos a while ago. I can't remember the exact amount of time ago it was, but it was regarding a technical glitch that we found in Quitch, a technical glitch that was actually flagged to us by one of the students that was utilizing Quitch. We fed this back to Sandra. Sandra fed it back to the development team at Quitch. They did their thing. You can tell that I don't have a IT background because I'm calling it their thing, but they did their thing to sort out the glitch, and we rolled this out to students again. I actually asked the students this very week on Tuesday whether what we had found a few months ago, whether it had been sorted out and that glitch was no longer there. And thank goodness the students fed back to me that nope, it was now a smooth product and it was easy to utilize. But also this meant that we now had the technology in place. But it also meant that we had to move over with our own resources here at the university and redesign them to be immersive and interactive. And that's exactly what we did. So just as a reminder, let's just have a look at what the resources look like. On the left-hand side of the screen, clearly this is unengaging. It just doesn't inspire students to learn, in my opinion. And that's why many hours were spent in redeveloping the resources. We built brand new interactive resources that held the students' attention, but also gave them a educational benefit. In essence, the redesign was based on providing students an educational audit puzzle or an audit puzzle piece to them. And then it was up to them to put those puzzle pieces together to formulate the entire picture. And once they have got their picture in mind, then they could go on and solve the auditing problem that was posed to them. Now, this was far more reflective of authentic audit practice, what industry actually does. A graduate employee will be expected to gather information about their client that they're about to start working on. As I mentioned earlier, it will not be the manager giving them a convenient little one piece of paper and saying, yeah, it's absolutely everything that you need. Nope. They have to use their initiative to go to different resources, in essence, the puzzle piece, go collect those puzzle pieces, build the picture together, and then they can, with their audit team, solve the audit problem in the audit firm. And that is what the challenge that we gave to our students in the auditing workshops. So to give you a sense of what the redeveloped resources looked like that we used, and Quitch was instrumental in this, is the following. So if you have a look at what was on the screen now, this is just a snippet of one of our workshops that we give over to students. Now, everything that is on the screen is a separate resource that we provide to students, and every different resource has got a different piece of information on it. These different pieces of information relate to the different resources that are also provided to students. Like, for example, on the screen right now, we've got an internal management communication that has got a whole lot of information. We've got a breaking news event that directly affects the organization of that is in question during that week's workshop. We also have a company constitution where it speaks about the voting rights and the powers of the different members of the organization. And then we've also built custom websites for each one of our 12 weeks. So I've got it here. I'll just pull it across to the screen. So this is one of the websites that we've built. So what you're seeing in front of you is one of the organizations that we discuss. And within the website, there's a whole heap of information, effectively the puzzle piece, that students can go gather to build that auditing puzzle. So they access all these different resources, not only the websites, but the resources that are on the screen as well. They get the picture together, and then we send them off to the individual groups, and collectively within the workshops, they discuss amongst themselves of how to solve whatever the auditing problem that we've posed to them. Step number 3 was letting our students immerse themselves in these activities. So initially, when Quitch was first introduced and the redeveloped resources were first built, we had a 4-week trial that we rolled out to students, and that was in the latter half of 2022. We did the same 4 weeks in the first half of 2023, and between the 2022 and 2023 student feedback, we made a decision whether to continue with this or not. The response we got from those 2 cohorts of students was very, very positive. And therefore, we made the decision to roll out the entire suite of resources and Quitch for all 12 weeks worth of workshops in the latter half of 2023, semester 2, 2023. In 24, we have now done the exact same. So we're now currently in week 3, and so students have now had 3 weeks of redeveloped resources and the exposure to Quitch, and they will now have for the remaining 12 weeks. And this is what we really wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that students were enjoying their audit education, not feeling bored or bound by it, but really immersing themselves in their resources. Now, with regards to measuring the success, we thought it was successful at the university as academic staff. We thought our resources looked great. We thought our way of teaching was pretty good. But truth be told, what I thought mattered very little. What Grania thinks matters very little. The ones that really matter to us is what our students think. And therefore, we asked them to give us feedback, both positive and negative feedback, with regards to the success of these projects, the success of Quitch, and the success of the redeveloped resources. And I was very, very interested to see what they had to say to us. Now, we got pretty good feedback from our students. The overwhelming majority of students said to us that this new approach really, really worked for them, and it was positive. Students enjoyed moving away from the conventional way of doing things. Many told us in their feedback that they found that their understanding of the subject and the materials improved, and the understanding of the concepts improved. There's also some ongoing research that's going on, research projects that are happening as we speak to measure the effectiveness of these threshold concepts. And I refer to Dr. Nikki Schoenfeld. I'm not sure if she's here today, but Dr. Nikki Schoenfeld from UWA, who's busy conducting one of these research papers. And I would be very keen to read the conclusions of that research. But all in all, it appears to us that it seems to be working based on the feedback that we've got from students. And that means for the foreseeable future, we will be delivering our audit education to the University of Melbourne students in this way, using the redeveloped resources, using Quitch as the platform, using the quizzes and the questions that we can upload into Quitch as the formative assessment piece. We feel that it's working and we're getting good feedback from students. So this is the approach that we've taken at the University of Melbourne. I hope that you find this interesting and maybe you reflect on your own teaching practice to think about how you could potentially evolve to make things more fit for purpose for your students. With that, I'd say thank you very much for listening to me. I'm not sure what my timing was, but feel free to connect. There is my email address, wayne.coetzee. For those of you who are not South African citizens and don't know how to pronounce my surname, forget about how to pronounce it. Just know how to spell it. It's wayne.coetzee. The official pronunciation is Coetzee, but who cares about that? wayne.coetzee@unimelb.edu.au. And please feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn, where we can continue any professional discussions. I'll be happy to take all of those connections. So thank you very much for listening. And I now hand back to Grania.
Wayne, my first comment is a massive congratulations. What an amazing amount of work you have done. And what I love in particular is that student-centric approach you've taken. You've never taken your eye off the most important thing here is what is the learning for the students? What is the outcomes for the students? And I love their feedback. And as you said, that's all that matters in the end. That's what we're here to do. But I think also, Wayne, in terms of some of the things you mentioned around, authentic practice, fit for purpose for us all to really reflect and think about the resources that we're delivering. But before I ask you too many other questions, I firstly have got a message from Nikki, and indeed she is in attendance today. So
Great.
I'm very keen to chat with you further. But I might hand over to the attendees and see if anyone has any specific questions for Wayne today. So much work, Wayne. That is absolutely incredible. And really, in what I consider it didn't take you, all things considered, that long to deliver on that. Because you started everything from scratch, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that's right. So I started all from scratch. I think a large portion of the time that I spent was thinking through everything from A to Z. Especially when you think about all the different inner workings of the resources, a lot of the times what my thought process was and when I applied my mind to it, there was a massive disconnect. But once I started thinking through everything and thought, would this work or not? Then I felt comfortable in building that resource, comfortable that it would deliver an educational benefit for the students.
And Wayne, on that, you talked about that, the authentic practice and so on, so critically important. And of course, as you said, auditing students are not going to go auditing once they've graduated, are not going to go out into the world and get handed this nice, neat package of materials. So you talked about one of the things that really set you on this journey was when you talked with those partners in the firms and said, really, the reality is what we're teaching in universities is not what's happening in practice today. Was that moment that made you think we really need to do something about changing this?
Yes, so there was a couple of different inflection points for that. When I first started at the University of Melbourne a few years ago, one of the other redevelopments that we decided to do was to change one of our assessment pieces to also be authentic, where we built in an assessment piece utilizing an audit software called Caseware. One of our key partners there was one of the big four audit firms when we were building this piece. So as we're busy building the other assessment piece, I started talking to one of the partners over at the big four and discussing the resources that we're delivering in workshops. And he was quite keen to have this discussion because often there was that expectation gap, to use an auditing term, of what the audit firms expected their graduate employees to be and what was being delivered to them from the university system. So on reflection from when I was chatting to him, I thought, well, let's try close this gap in our actual workshops itself and deliver a job-ready graduate to these audit firms. So yeah, it was quite a few years in the making before I started doing the proper redevelopment of all the workshop materials.
Oh, fantastic. And when we do have a question for you, did you have any hiccups delivering this?
Yeah, quite a few, especially during the trial era. And it was a lot more hiccups was in the very first time we rolled this out, which is the second half of 2022. With the resources, a lot of the resources were quite, for lack of a better word, vague. And students didn't quite enjoy, understandably, students didn't quite enjoy that. So that meant tightening up the redeveloped resources based on that student feedback, and once again rolling it out for our trial period in semester 1 of 2023. The other hiccups that we also found was at times with the technology using Quitch, those hiccups got displayed to us via student feedback. Sometimes it was immediate feedback in the class. And of course, we immediately fed that back to Grania and the development team at Quitch to fix the issue. So yes, there's no doubt that there were hiccups and it was not plain sailing. And I mean, who knows? There might be more hiccups in the next couple of weeks. Who knows what the future holds? But I think whatever happens, I think we're pretty confident that we would have a solution to a problem that we would encounter.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I think one of the other things that Nikki was saying aside from here was about, yeah, what an amazing project, Wayne, she said. So, and I think that both of you are looking at doing some research down the track as well, which will be really amazing. I'll see, I'm conscious of everyone's time, so, and I want to be respectful of your time, Wayne. It's been very kind of you to put your time aside today for us. But I'll just check if there's any other questions from the audience before we then kind of wrap it up for today. And yes, there is one other question, Wayne. Can you see that students can be co-creators for content? That's a great question.
So yes, so let me just put that into context. So students be co-creators for content going forward or during the classroom?
Going forward.
Yeah, so I 100% going forward. The content that was redeveloped was based on existing workshops and existing content that we had that was just redesigned. Going forward, based on student feedback, we've got an open ear to them all the time with whatever we roll out to them. And if there is something that we feel is not working, or students are clearly confused in the classroom setting when we're busy discussing whatever the resource is or whatever the problem is, that is an immediate point that we think, okay, this particular piece is not working. Based on the student feedback, let's go and change that to make the students' experience going forward even better. So absolutely, yes, the students are very, very much involved in this redesign and redevelopment.
It's such a great student-centric approach. Wayne, I'm going to perhaps wrap it up there, but there's just a couple of things I really wanted to go back over. Some of the things you thought I think are really key to us successfully navigating a great experience, a great outcome for students. And you talked about looking at our resources, having a really good look at ourselves. Are they fit for purpose? Is the practice actually authentic? And I think the important and key element you talked about here was the importance of talking with industry. And you talked about bringing in the big four and getting feedback from them. I loved your story about your 17-year-old niece who, yes,
yeah,
tells us as it is, and how boring accounting is. And then, as you said, in particular, auditing in terms as a subset of that. But I think we all know we have a major issue with the pipeline and accounting, and we're all trying to do lots of things about that. But I think, Wayne, one of the things that what you're doing can have a significant impact on showing that this is not boring, but actually very entertaining and a great experience. So I think if more of us can learn from what you're doing, Wayne, we'll go some way towards improving that pipeline again. Also, I think you talked about the importance of AI and how that will be more and more used as we go out in the world as accountants and auditors. And we absolutely need to, therefore, include that in our delivery and courses to students. And about those resources, but asking the question, do they inspire or in fact, do they discourage? I thought that's a great question for us as academics to be asking one another. And then being really authentic in terms of what we're delivering. And always, you never took your eye off that focus on what are the student benefits of doing this. So Wayne, on behalf of all of the attendees, myself and all of the students that you deliver to, a huge congratulations on what you've done to date. I know you continue to do great things, but also, yeah, just thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us today, Wayne.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a privilege to present yesterday. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to the attendees for coming along as well. Bye now. Thanks, everybody.